Hello YouTube, it's Vinny Silverman here with Philip Pena. Recently, Philip got first place at ARGENT SAGA Championship Las Vegas. We're all very proud of him for finally winning. And I got third place. Still a good showing. Fortunately, we had to play each other in top 4.
Yeah.
And we both played the same deck, which is Jamal Sola.
Yeah, I think 1 card difference.
Yeah, which I guess we'll talk about, but
probably the reason why I won instead of Viddy.
Yes, of course. Yeah, this means that everyone on More Mana Gaming has a first place, a second place, and a third place. So to celebrate, we're doing this wonderful deck profile with Phil Pena, where we will talk about the deck that we played. So what did we play, Phil?
So we chose to play J Millie and Sola. Just a tempo control deck that kind of just wears down your opponent's resources and then attacks with bigger creatures. As you can see, throughout the deck we'll go through just how we take advantage of that, really just grinding your opponent down. So for towers, so obviously Champion Spirit towers, we played the basic ones, nothing new here. Probably the better towers in the game so far. And just a quick rundown, we played 1 Corona Shard for removal. It's way better now than ever because of Citric Visitor, and really outs a lot of key monsters. Hollow Crystal, which we kind of thought was a focal point in the deck, and just we abuse it more in our deck as you see as we go on. And then the crystals, the regular Argent crystals. So
why do we play Sola instead of another inferior spirit like Kite?
Well, the yellow cards give you a lot of protection versus the aggro deck, which is probably the second best deck in the format. You really get to take advantage of really the yellow cards to abuse control. Essentially, Liam is probably the second deck in the format. It's really a big contender, and the yellow cards really put it over the top, giving you a lot of defensive options versus all their attacks. You have board wipes, you have big defenders, you have early removal, and yellow really has that package. Also, the spirit just breaking into another defender for early trades, or even just abusing the number of creatures on our board to attack for game. When given, we can turn the corner with this deck really easy. So I guess we'll start with the blue creatures. We played Tor Azraseer. They're just early drops. Basically, spoiler alert, we played Juggernaut in our deck. This was just to check for the fire and the wind tower to make sure our Juggernauts stick and can take over the game by attacking, and then solo restanding as a defender, which is a really big interaction. We didn't feel like 3 was necessary because we did have a lot of 1 mana and 2 mana cards, but it is very viable in the deck. And we also cut 1 to make room for another card later we'll show in the deck. Then we played 3 Witches. This is sort of like the value tempo controlling part of the deck with creatures. It's a 2-drop, which is I think you see in the finals. I play around Garger with this. It's very relevant. It's 2 mana. Does get you 2 counters for your J Millie when you are not trying to fatigue, but thin your deck for certain cards. And it's just great attackers. Also let you stick to the board so that you get to play Behemoth. And then the target for the Witch, we played 3 anime spellbooks. They just get you the better spells in your deck, let you gun up the board really easy and become super big threats. I guess not super big threats, but just relevant threats when you have Juggernaut. If not, it checks the towers and lets you attack the way you want it, which is really important.
Yeah, this deck checking towers with your small creatures is really important because you want to play an aggressive early game, and then you turn the corner late game with your big
threats.
Does
let you find the fire and wind tower really early. Instead of your kind of blinding attack with your thousands, your 500, you get to check 2 towers per turn, and so that eventually your thousands can break those towers. And if it puts 2 targets on the board for the wind tower to bounce back, and essentially they're just more counters for J Millie, so it's pretty nice. Then we played, which most other decks didn't play, 3 Juggernauts. This was like the focal point of our deck. This card is actually kind of a problem, and it hasn't shown up on the radar as problems yet because it is really hard to interact with, super hard. They're like only pretty much the blue cards can interact with it, and I think that's about it. If I'm not mistaken.
The focal point of our deck also is we just try to interact with our opponent's Juggernauts by having like all the possible outs to them, so all the board wipes and more of our own Juggernauts.
So it's like really hard to contest with. It protects itself. You don't mind going low on shards because you just have this monster here. Hollow Crystal makes it bigger, so in the mirror match, whoever has more Hollow Crystals, and it can attack over bigger creatures because of that. Really having its own protection built in, and it definitely triggers the Mayu effect whenever you want. Protects you from what's that? Void Fire Desolation with the crystal protection. Just overall, it's exactly what our deck wants to be doing, and it's really hard to get rid of the first one, let alone the second and third one. Most of the times, my opponents were not expecting multiple copies, and after playing the first one, the second one kind of just won the game outright. Super strong focal point, really problematic card, and yeah, definitely what puts this deck over the top.
Yeah, pretty much the perfect top end threat for this deck.
Definitely one of the better control cards, and exactly where you want in the meta right now. And then we played one Mayu, probably the best monster in the game. Definitely, like, there's not much to say about it. Gets you whatever spell you want, given, you know, maybe shards for attacking, or Phantasmal Storm to kill something, or ASB to remove blockers, draw cards. Like, it does everything you want with removal built in, and then just lets you, in conjunction with Juggernaut or other shard drain effects, has a remove on your opponent's turn. Just like a super strong Argent Rare card that's, you know, probably necessary in every blue deck.
We also saw a lot of Tux at this championship, and Mayu came up as being, it's not an activated effect, so if they stun it, you can still use its trigger effect to put stuff on top of your opponent's deck when you shard drain.
Yeah, that was irrelevant. You know, made it so that, like, they can't invalidate the Juggernaut with Tux, because we could sort of Phantasmal Bolt or something like that, and just sort of like stave off their attack for one turn. This way we can drop another Juggernaut and, like, or kill them, you know, essentially. So really nice, strong card. And then for the blue spells, 3 SBs, probably, you know, one of the better blue spells. Bounces things out the way, just, you know, generic card draw, really strong effect. 3 Phantasmal Guards. Gun up the board versus aggro, gets you counters for G-Miller to draw cards in tempo and control matchups, and just makes it cheaper cheaper Behemoth when you get it. Pretty relevant to stop relevant attacks, because they do go up to 1500, which trades with most things. So yeah. Then we play 3 Phantasmal Storm. Obviously one of the best spells in the deck. Kills pretty much anything that is of relevance, except obviously, you know, 5 mana and higher cards. Like, gets rid of problematic Rudies. Watchwoman, which is a really powerful one. Anybody's, like, witches or things that are being pumped by by the Behemoth. Also, because you have the ability to search itself, if, like, let's say they have Iskandar in the stack, you can deal 2,000, put in the graveyard with Iskandar still in the stack, shard drain and kill it. Or same thing with, like, Vengeance and stuff like that. Things that are, like, really problematic at 4K, you just have 2 of these and they're searchable in the same turn, and you get to deal with those problematic monsters. So really, really strong card. Also lets you trigger Mayu when you don't have any shard drain effects, because you can just fail to find and put something on top of their deck.
Yeah,
so.
Also just casting the Storm with Mayu on the board is, like, a
great
great
if you ever get this back, or if you have one on and you use it, like, you get to kill something, put something on top, and then have it set up that you can keep doing that. So it's kind of crazy.
Also, since we're, like, a pretty big hand control deck, we usually have 7 cards in our hand, so being able to just pick something up out of your graveyard, sort of like an extra card that doesn't count towards your hand limit, is pretty good too.
Yeah, there's a lot of intrinsic value with that card, so just... Yeah. Then we play 2 Meizu. Although it's on a Mega Magic, and usually a Mega Magic is really powerful, this is, like, sort of like you have to be kind of losing the game to really take full advantage of it. But it does ease up pressure a lot of times. You know, uninteractable cards like Watchwomen or Juggernaut eats crystals, maybe lets them, like, if you tap it down, they're like, okay, fine, I'm going to kill you anyway, and you tap it down, then you can kill them or something. Does ease up the pressure when you get early game. It's kind of stifling in your hand because you really don't want to play it. But does in the mirror match get rid of Sola, so lets you attack for free. So we cut it down to 2 as opposed to 3, just because we felt like it's more of a late game card, and it doesn't really have too many applicable uses in the early game, but does count as a spell still for the Witch, which is, like, how we go up the early game versus the Liam decks. So and probably one of the more powerful spells in the deck, honestly, is Shards of Winter. There's been so many times where I use it on offense and defense, and, you know, honestly, it could have been a 3-0 because it's just so powerful. Your opponent doesn't expect it. They have a wide board. They're like, oh, I'm going to kill you because I can't kill you through, I can kill you through Juggernaut. So you block a few times with Juggernaut so it doesn't die, and then the rest of the attacks you shard, or you shard offensively and you attack your Juggernaut. They can't interact with the Juggernaut, and you just kill them. Super powerful card, really cool to get off of Mayu when you're at 10 mana because you still have a 4 mana open, and you use your free spell for something else. overall, just a really powerful card. The only reason we didn't want 3 in our main deck is because like it is a dead draw, and against Liam, you can only have so many dead cards in your hand in your opener. You really need to interact with their O2 before they like. If they go O2 into V, you can kind of lose pretty quickly. So we could have done the 2 just to make sure that we don't get into interaction.
Also, since like Mara needs 2 different spells, we want to sort of split our options up, so it's unlikely that we have Mara with like 2 of the same spell and then can't do anything.
Yeah, that's true too. And that's all the blue cards. For the yellow cards, we play 3 Finisher Rate. I think this is an obligatory card to play if you're playing yellow. Some number of these. They do wipe the board for Juggernaut and problematic cards, O2 as well. If you're able to gun up the board versus the O2 early, you can kind of just Finishing Rate. And the Sola does trade with the Kite most often in the early game because you just block the O2 and they kite it. So they can't bounce their O2 back to their hand and you can just wipe the board. Also in the mirror match, when your opponent gets 2 head, then let's say they have Juggernaut and a Mayu or something like that, you can just finish and raid the board and reset and, you know, take a breather and kind of just play the game from there. Oh, super strong shard. It's another spell for Mara, which is pretty relevant, and yeah, just really strong.
Yeah, it's kind of perfect for this deck because your deck is built on like early game aggression with 1-drops into Behemoth. You break a bunch of towers, and then when they start to come back on the board, you finish and raid them, and then play your own, like, your Juggernauts and your crazy big threats.
A big thing is, like, when you're killing your opponent's towers and they're not killing you, they're focused on the board, they're kind of getting an advantage, like, card advantage-wise. So when, like, you go to make those final pushes, you're at a deficit card advantage-wise, right? Because the Dark Tower takes a card, the Fire card pops a card, the Wind card reduces your tempo, right? So this is like you interact with those towers, and then this one kind of brings you back up to speed with all those turns you missed on small like card losses, because you can 3 for 1 and 4 for 1 then with this card, and then you kind of are back at the same even game state as before. Then because we thought Liam was the probably second best deck, and most people do attack in the mirror match, we played 3 Yukis. This card was kind of phenomenal. Obviously, against O2, it's really great because your opponent just attacks as early as possible, and then this can crack the O2 even before the game really gets started. They go turn, like on a play, they go turn 2, attack when you have 1 mana, drop this, you know, and then you get to attack over their O2, which is really, really nice. And then, you know, you get to clear up the board of Finishing Rate, or just deal with the tokens of Phantasmal, ASB or something like that. So super strong card. In the mirror, they do attack to get aggressive, and it comes down, and against every matchup they're pretty much attacking. It's just free attackers. Kind of gets you to 5 creatures real quickly to attack for game, and the target attack is really relevant. So also lets you take down Juggernaut, like if you have multiple one, or they make a miss block with one of your 1,000 guys. This can crack over the Juggernaut for the other 2,000. So. And then we had one Hikari. This card kind of overperformed a lot of times where my opponent thought they were coming back. They would crack 3 towers. I would let them crack 3 towers, and then I would just attack them for game because this is an extra attacker. Summons 2 guys as opposed to 1. Also, it's just a blocker that comes out of nowhere in case they were like, oh yeah, shards you have 1 spot open, there's nothing you can do because I already cracked the light tower and you have no Sola. You Hikari, block, and then you kill him on a crackback, which is really strong. Kind of one of the overperformers of the deck. Really, really important spell. We have more copies on the board because of how good and utility it was. So, and then we played 1 Kara. We weren't too sure between the Omega Magic and Kara, which one we wanted more. Obviously, the Hikari is better against aggressive decks, but Kara is really needed in the mirror match because you have to kill the Juggernaut, and this lets you do it. They were both really strong. I didn't play the Kara as much because I was rarely behind on the board, but there were certain spots where my opponent would like Finishing Ray me and then set up a Juggernaut, and then I would just attack over the Juggernaut with this. So, really relevant card. Also, it's just like a powerhouse. Can't be targeted. Has Brawler and becomes like a 45k Guardian or something like that. Can deal with Gigantes, magical Gigantes in the mirror if you have like no towers, and then you just pump it all the way and attack. So pretty sick. And that's all the yellow cards. Now we're going to neutral cards. One card we did cut the Azura Seer for was Bone Scavenger. While in testing, we thought the black decks might have a small edge versus J-Millie because they have Allurement, which is stymies our aggression, and then we have to rely solely on control. We thought that Bone Scavenger would be a perfect place to kind of combat that. Between that and the rain decks, you were able to get certain advantages with just manipulating the graveyard, and some amount of Bone Scavengers were needed to get that far. So we added some to the main just to kind of combat that. Also, it's just good aggression in the mirror because in game 1, some people play Keiko, so that's kind of like one of the better controlling cards. and just has a lot of longevity, and Bone Scavenger can out that early. So, and then we played 3 Behemoths. This is where the aggression comes from. It turns all your little attackers into relevant attackers. Is a cheaply costed guy, overstated, comes down for 1 mana most of the time. There's just so much to say about the card. It's just great. And then the final card of the main deck, we only had room for 2 Visitor. While Visitor is really good in the early game, it doesn't really do anything. And against aggro is like kind of the only time you can play it. It's very rare you can play in the mirror match because you guys are just fighting for board control most of the time. But when it gets activated effect, you get a powerful solo back and lets you just keep using Corona Crystal and stuff. And ASB lets you put it back on top of your dock, and so does Mizu, puts it back on top of your hand, so you can just play them again. So that's pretty cool. Not as good as like when you have Kite or something like that to keep playing it, but it is still really strong. So, and that's
big dynamic in the mirror is whether you want to like turn on their visitors and their Omega Magics, or whether you want to play more of a control game.
Yeah, definitely like aggressively trying to like my game against Goodwin, game 1 I aggroed him, and game 2 and 3 I tried to control him, and obviously if you watch the finals, the games played out very different. The aggro, I was in full control, and like I got to kill him whenever he just ran out of enough threats. But the controlling option was like really weird. We kind of had a fight most of the time, and whoever just got like the better cards kind of won. So interesting spot, but yeah, definitely that's more powerful. And then onto the side deck, we sided 2 Reserve Guardians. They were just there for against aggro. We sided out the Scavengers because they weren't very good, and we just put in more blockers for early game. Also, people sided Silver Mist Phoenix, which is 1500 and can't be interacted with, so this just blocks it clean. Also, Hollow Crystal pumps this really nicely, so, and more counters for J Millie, pretty relevant. Then, unfortunately, I didn't have all the cards for the deck, so I had to proxy this, but I had 2 Keikos. Like I said before, in the mirror match, they're what lets you go longer and have longevity because there's no infinite in this deck. You will deck out at some point to fatigue. So this lets you have that staying power and reuse like cards like Juggernaut and Mayu if they do happen to out them, because most people don't keep Scavenger in a mirror match. So you really want to like get a key point where you can just make them use all their Phantasmal Storms and then just drop this, and then like they're just gonna concede because the game can't go as long as you can. And you can just stall them out. So really strong card for the mirror. Probably some good moves in the main deck, but we expected more Liam than J Millie. So. And then another card we had were 2 Acid Monger. Like we said before, the dark decks were really scary to us, and really specifically Hoenna, because she was able to stymie our early aggression with the spiders, and then Allurement and Yami Allurement back to take our 1-drops from us. And without having the book to die on our side of the field, we can't get the spells, and then we can't facilitate our game plan. And by then, like, we're trying to catch up with our controlling cards. That's just not good enough, and the Hidden Lab brings them back into the game because it trades our removal for card draw. So the way we figured is that if we can kill their Hidden Labs, then it wouldn't matter because we can just 1-for-1 their creatures. And the reason why we only play 2 is because you can just ASB it back and pop it again, and they'll never really attack into this, and you'll never attack with it to kill it. So that was our game plan. Also, if anybody played green, which no one did, it was cool for that too. Then we had 1 Hikari in the side. Like I said, the card overperformed. We just kind of, whenever we didn't want the Hikari, we switched it down to Hikari, or whenever the Yugis weren't that good, we brought in another Hikari. Probably should have been a second one in the sideboard. The card was really like an overperformer, and yeah, it came in a lot of matchups. And then we had 1 Kara in the side. This was, again, whenever the Hikaris weren't good enough, like in a control matchup, or the Yugis weren't good enough, I would switch it into another Kara. We thought if other people were playing Juggernauts, we would need a card to out them, or even the Gigants. If there was an Overlord on Gigant and they got ahead, we can bring this down cheaply, pump it, and attack over the Gigant. So, yeah. A third Bone Scavenger, this is mainly for Urgon and Hoenna decks. We did want to limit their potential on Yami or the Shade, and just more graveyard manipulation is not that bad. And then where our sideboard between me and Vinny's differ, I couldn't get a card at the last minute. So I put in 1 J Millie, the Cryptic Wielder. My thought process was, in the mirror match, sometimes you'll fight for value and you are down on hand advantage. This will bring you back up. And if you need cards to like double spell, this is you play like this under Juggernaut or this in a Mayu and really take the tempo back in your favor, even if you're behind on board. The card I think Vinny sided was
Shards of Winter.
Yeah.
That card is really good.
And it should have been Shards of Winter because this card was not as good as Shards of Winter. So, and then since we kind of thought like our deck was like where people would evolve the meta, we played 2 Chronostasis to kind of deal with other people's Juggernauts. We thought everybody would kind of move to this 3 Juggernaut plan because it is so strong. And Chronostasis is honestly one of the best ways to out it because you let them kind of do what they do a setup, and then just Chronostasis them on the end phase so that you can develop on your turn free charge, you know. And then we played 1 Tafriel, the Fallen Celestial. This was because the Dark Tower is so relevant to hit in the mirror match that they get to May you a lot because you hold it until the end, so you're able to, you don't really want a J Millie crystal because you'll go into fatigue, so you just flip down the J Millie, get your May back and play it, which is kind of insane. Also lets you attack over Juggernauts and Gigants as well. I mean, not Gigants because you can't pump it, but Juggernauts as well. And it's just a huge threat that your opponent has a hard time interacting. And every time they put into your hand, you can like bounce your Spirit to do its effect, and then like Visitor to get the Spirit back, and then just keep doing that if they keep bouncing it to your hand. So super relevant card. Came up a few times. I think I played 2 mirror matches. Came up, but in one of them, but in testing came up a couple times. And then finally, 2 Watchwomen. This was just in case like there was time issues or like against the black decks like a Hoenna, you can fight for the board really well. Also came in the mirror match because it does let us apply a lot of pressure with our aggressive strategy. We have a mid-range strategy with Watchwoman, and then we have an end game strategy with Juggernaut, and that kind of just like filled in our game plan for that. And yeah, that's the whole deck.
Yep. Alright, so anything you'd change about this deck, Phil?
Anything I'd change about this deck? The 3rd Charge of Winter was probably really important. Probably find room somewhere there, and I think that was it.
Yeah. So basically, you'd play my deck.
Yeah, something like that.
Alright, good to know. Any shout-outs you got, Phil?
Yeah. Big shout-out to More Mana Gaming. Everybody there. Big shout out to my teammate Vinny, who did well and helped me test for this, and you know was one of the reasons why I propelled forward in the event. Big shout outs for him just taking the ass whooping appropriately that I gave him in top. Big shout outs to Eric Goodwin, that's my boy. Sorry I had to do it to you. And True Duels, or True, what are they now? True Friends. Big shout out to True Friends, and yeah, all friends, supporters, and followers. Yeah.
Yeah, and make sure to check out More Mana Gaming. We got big things planned for the future. And yeah, now that all 3 of us are going to have our own card, be on the lookout for those as well. This has been More Mana Gaming. Vinny Silverman and Phil Pena. Thanks for watching.